Uh, Good evening, everyone. My name is Nilay Singh, and I am a second year BCom student in Krishna Jayanti College. And today I am here on YouTube, to discuss about a very important, chapter in our syllabus. And as you can see from the slide itself, its name is How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy. So, without wasting any of your time, I would like to move forward. So, this is a slide about the author, Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy is also known as for his longest works like War and Peace, Anna Karenina, which are commonly regarded as among the finest novels ever written. Especially during his last 3 decades, Tolstoy also achieved world renown as moral and religious teacher. His doctrine of non-resistance to evil had important influence on Gandhi also, Mahatma Gandhi, our freedom fighter. And also Tolstoy's religious ideas no longer command the respect and personality and interest in his life, if anything, increase over the years. So this is all about the introduction about the author and moving to the next slide. So it's a general question to everyone, like all to my listeners, all to my listeners and everyone right now. So according to you, what is, the general meaning of a greed, right? And everyone has a greed somewhere in his life, I think, his or her life, I guess. And in any point of your life, there was a like point phase where you have a greed for something, right? So I wanted to start the definition with a simple phrase. So as long as greed is stronger than compassion, there will always be suffering. So in this particular, chapter, we saw how a greed, greed in one person's life destroys his life and which lead to a death. And I think the phrase is very well suited for this particular, situation, I guess. And if I talk about the meaning, right, it's selfish desire for food, money, or possession over and above one's need. So this is the meaning and overall idea of what greed is actually. So moving forward, so without telling about anything else, I would like to straight away come to the critical analysis of the story, as every one of you is familiar with the everyone is familiar with the story and everything. So I wanted to start right. As as humans, we have desires that make us take possession on something. More than that, what we have to be benefit us. So in this short story by Leo Tolstoy delivers the message that greed in the end brings us nothing but death itself. It's very well said, I guess. And story tell us that even if we had enough that we can get by, the odds of becoming wealthier is so seductive to us that we are ready to lose everything we love. It's very well said by the author. And Tolstoy starts its story with two women and their argument in whose life is better, right? Is it is a life with or without ownership. As they continue, the owner of the house, Pam, now this is the main character in the story, joins and agrees that life without possession is better, hence the fact that they will have no temptation towards the wealth and not fear the devil. So in this story, the devil is greed, but he himself thinks about having land of his own, so he would not fear the devil. From the beginning, Pahom is a hard-working man, but he makes a mistake in thinking that more land would give him a better life. He says it itself, if I had a plenty of land, I shouldn't be feared that the devil himself. When he gets when he gets the shot at buying his own land, he jumps into the chance with the mentally prepared mind that will be happy with more land. Even if he had a lot more or a fertile land to grow crops and not pay fines for his animals, he was not satisfied. Paham was well content and everything would have been right if the neighboring pigeons would not been trespassed on his corn fields and meadows. So even if I had more than enough land, he looked up for one land. This reflects the character's greed. Paham would be fine and happy with the extended land, but the human instincts made him get greedier and greedier as time, went by. So in this particular slides, we see how, since we can see Paham is a very hardworking person, but in this particular story, uh, how greed controls him, and in the possession of greed, he tries you know he want he wa- he had a lot of desires to have a land and so on, right? And as you know, it is in the story, the devil is a greed, right? Moving on to the next slide. So, as the story progresses, Paham's behavior reflects the message that greed has no line. As Paham's land expanded, he got into many riots with his neighbors, which led him to move to different larger land. So, as the story progresses, Paham's behavior, kind of changes after, getting a lot of, greed. It's obvious, like in reality also, if we see if a person gets a lot of fame, if he get a lot of wealth here in his life, there are some changes in his behavior, right? He is different from what he was earlier. So, and this we can see from the story also, as there was a reflects, there's some changes in his life, and he used to has get he has to get into many riots with his neighbors, which led him to move different and larger land. And whenever he get into riots like this, and with his new neighbors, he moves into new land to satisfy himself, reflecting the greed in him growing. What is the tradesman passing by told him about a land of sold for less money. If I take it out there, I can get more than 10 times as much for the money. So he abandoned everything that he worked on so hard and left for inspection on that land. The land was always just the way the tradesman described. His greed just got out of control and took it over him. He was exhausted walking all the day, and he tried making it back to his meeting place before the day was over. But due to his weak body, he was defeated and made on the last battle, wondering, there is plenty of land, but will God let me live on it? He had taken the journey too much and died in the process. So, when, when the protagonist went to, see the land, he was very confident, like the greed was controlling him, and he was very overconfident, and that he's gonna win, he's gonna take this land and every single thing. But, at the end, what happened is he loses his life, winning. And what's the title of the story is how much land does a man need? If we, see the last few lines in the story, it has been, the answer is given in that particular lines that throughout the story, the Tolstoy was trying to tell us human nature pushes us for more than what we need. Many of us think that having ownership makes us happy. And in fact it does, but we need to understand that once the process starts, there is no need until that was Tolstoy was reflecting in the old, and all he needed a piece of land. And right, so in the end he died. He lose every single thing of his, you know and there was an answer like how much land a man needs, and the answer was like 6 feet of ground, the ground, to bury his body after his death. And I think this is the answer of, and this was the answer actually. And we as a human being, we used to understand like we should not be having a greed, right? And this story I can relate, right? I can relate it to one of my, I was watching a series recently. Yeah, it's a Hindi series actually. Uh, and I don't want to name that series actually. I don't want to know. But that series, right? The character who is there, he is a very poor character. He lives in a slums area. He collects money for his family, for his own living. But someday he met with a miracle, and and from that particular day, you know, he started to get, started knowing future. The future even starts coming the next day or the very next moment, right? And you know, somehow he make this as his business, right? To uh, in a way, in a bad manner, to make money, to make his own living, to have a wealthy and a richer life. But uh, but as soon, there's a when wealth strikes in your life, there is a point where you get a greed in yourself, and that what happened. You know that series is still incomplete, but somehow in the last few episodes it was said that that particular person died, and after studying this particular story, I felt this thing, and that having a lot of greed, but nothing came. As I could move you to the very first slide. It was like Nothing came, but only come is death. I wanted to, relate it to that. So this is all about the critical analysis of a story. So this and this. So, let's talk about the themes. What are the themes which are discussed in this particular story? The first theme is the correcting power of greed. Now, Pahum, the story's protagonist, finds that his desire to own land grows as he acquires more land, and the end. His greed to own more land than he really needs in the case of death. Now, the key theme of the story is greed and its power to corrupt. And see, remember in the first slide only, I asked you what is the meaning of greed, right? Because greed is the main thing which it has been discussed in this particular story. And at the beginning of the story, Pahom, that he'll not fear the devil himself. If he only had enough land, the devil begins to tempt him, and Pahom was opportunity after opportunity to acquire more land. When his land grows, Pahom is never satisfied. There's one feature, I could say, one benefit of greed, as more and more, such, more and more get something, never get satisfied actually. And he's increasingly willing to step over another people to get more and better land for himself. He finds those who were once his fellow peasants, tries to punish a peasant for a crime and he didn't commit, and takes advantage of landowner in financial difficulty. Baham thus begins to resemble his neighbor's harsh steward, whom he initially loathed for finding people for the commune. As I told you, right, he used to have rights with his new neighbors, after changes in his behavior. So the second point, or the second themes which you can find in the story is susceptibility to temptation. Despite believing, right, that country people are less likely than people in town to succumb to temptation, Kahum ultimately proves that people everywhere are equally like to surrender to it. The part of the irony in Tolstoy's stories lies in the fact that Pahom and his wife believe that people in the country are less susceptible to the devil's temptation. Right. Pahom's wife believes that the men of the town are constantly in danger of temptation through cards, wine, or women, that they are, corrupted by these things. Often enough, like the old proverb that the devil makes work for idle hands, Pahom claims that the hard work of country life makes people too busy to be tempted. So he is not tempted by cards, wine, or women. Pahom is already at fault at the beginning of the story because he's discontent with what he has. Simply by giving Pahom what he desires, more and more land, the devil corrupts him with greed and ultimately kills him. So Paham's story demonstrates therefore anything can lead to temptation if one is not careful, and anyone is susceptible to temptation. Okay. And but there is one more thing which I have not mentioned in the PPT actually. There's rural Russian values. As I was searching on the internet about this, and I found some few of the results. I can share it with you. So Tolstoy, like many Russian writers across history, often writes in praise of Russian peasantry, whose simple lifestyle evokes a sense of bucolic elegance and national pride. Toiling in the fields, uh, toiling in the fields, owning only such luxurious can be handspun, and the humble pride of self-sufficient labor are all taken as tokens of the lifestyle. Also had many others right of an honor. How the short story takes up the potential for a Russian peasantry to be led astray, motivated by desires not benefiting the station, such as greed and temptation. So these all are the particular themes which is being discussed in the particular story, and and I have been attached the PPT in my description, so you can get it for your reference also. And that's it. Last, I wanted to say like thank you so much for listening to me, and I would like to say please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any sort of doubt, you can comment. You can comment on my video. We will surely get back to you. Thank you. Thank you so much for.